Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends on Thursday, September the 26th. Pleasure to have you with us today.
Hi, Paul.
Mel Zelenak is over here having a little laughing fit before we come on. Get yourself together there, Mel.
I will.
All right. He is here to talk about consumer and travel tips, right? We're going to deal mainly with travel tips today?
Yes, I'm going to have one consumer question and the rest will
Okay.
be travel. Last time we talked about travel exclusively, and I thought we had a good time with this question and answer format.
Okay.
If you recall, you had 4 questions. You answered all 4 of them
Oh,
correctly.
I did?
You did.
Oh.
One of them
Kinda
probably
iffy?
would have been counted wrong in my classes at the university, but I gave you a break on it.
Okay. All right. So what's the consumer?
All right, let me start with the review of last time, if persons were not listening to them, to the tips we covered. We talked a little bit about that favorite website I have for Airfare, that ITA Software Matrix. And again, I would encourage anyone to go on there. You just Google ITA Software Matrix. It is
Okay, it's what now again?
ITA
ITA
Software Matrix.
Software Matrix. And what do you get?
Okay, what you get there is you'll get a screen that asks you where you want to go. Mm-hmm. Let's say I want to go from Columbia to Vancouver, British Columbia.
Okay.
So I would type in Columbia or COU, and I would type in Vancouver or YVR.
Okay, and for those of you watching, we've got it up on the screen right now.
Okay, great. And that's, I can't see it from here.
That's okay.
But then if you have flexibility in your dates, then you plug that in too. Like if you can go one day earlier, if you can save literally a couple $1,000, are you willing to do that?
It will give you the lowest airfare from the airport you put in, finding the dates that are the lowest for you.
Finding the dates within 30 days of when you want to go.
Wow,
So,
okay.
Yeah. The second thing it does is it will give you the alternate airports. And this, Paul, I can do everything I'm talking about now, which will be 4 or 5 potential steps or 4 or 5 potential options. And you could do that within a minute.
Okay, so it's ITA Software Matrix.
Yes.
Now, can you book a flight on that website?
No,
also?
and that's what I want to say. And that's an advantage because they're not pushing anything.
Okay, but you can't book the flight there. You have to go then to the airline website to
You
book the
could
flight.
go to the airline, but you're asking a good question because another key is they recommend on there that you get the code that they're using for that specific flight. The airline will have the code. A travel agent will know what you mean by the code.
Right,
And then when
but-
you call the airline, you tell the airline, this is the code I want to use, this is the price.
Right, it's the fare code.
It's the fare code.
Because when you go to, like, if you go to United's website and you put in from Columbia to San Francisco or Columbia to Hawaii, it'll give you 20 or 30 different code fares that are available, and you can pick any of those. But and they're all a different price.
They're all different prices, and the other beauty of ITA software is they show you the lowest price.
Okay.
And again, you can say out of Columbia, you could say out of anywhere up to 3,000 miles away from where you live.
Yeah.
And the benefit of that, Paul, is you could still fly out of Columbia, but maybe O'Hare, and we pointed this out in a previous show, O'Hare in Chicago might have a flight to Europe that's a little over $200. Out of Columbia, that same exact flight getting you up to O'Hare and then out could be in the thousands of dollars.
Right. So you could buy the way that could work. Then you buy a round trip from Columbia to Chicago, and then a round trip from Chicago to wherever you're going.
And the downside of that is what, Paul?
Well, if you miss the connection, you got a problem.
You do have a problem. And if you have flight insurance, sometimes that will cover it. But the other problem is you will be inconvenienced there because you have to pick up your luggage.
You got to pick up your luggage and recheck it again.
That's correct. But if you allow enough time and
or spend the night.
Spend the night.
Spend the night. That's a good thing to do. Yeah. Okay. So
All right,
that's
so that was one. We talked about group rates on cruises and how anybody can qualify for a group rate, even if you don't, if you're only booking one cruise, one cabin.
person. Yeah.
And the way you do that is call a travel agency and ask them if they're in a large consortium. And if they are, then find out if they have a group rate. Another way to find it out is to go on Vacations to Go. And if Vacations to Go is dramatically different than the rate you're being quoted, it's probably because they have a group.
Okay. So you want to ask for a group rate. All right, Mel, we got about 2 minutes left here.
Okay, let's go to Paul. You know I'm a strong advocate of broad-based index funds. What are broad-based index funds?
Well, I don't know exactly, but just what the name might imply as broad-based index funds is that it's a wide range of stocks ranging from one to another. But a wide range.
Okay,
Is that right?
Yes, that's essentially correct. Now let's belabor this a bit more by asking you what an S&P index fund is.
Well, that's a
Standard
S&P.
Poor's.
Yeah, Standard & Poor's index fund. Isn't it pretty much the same?
Well, it's a broad-based index fund of 500 of the largest stocks.
Okay.
In this case, it would be in the U.S. You have all kinds. You have a total stock market, and basically they buy essentially 5,000 stocks.
But the S&P 500 is only of 500.
500 of the largest.
Top.
That's correct. And I want to point out something else. If you invest in that and don't rely on someone picking stocks for you, there's typically over a 15-year period, that index fund will make it at least, in 92 to 96% of the cases, they are going to beat all other funds.
Individual funds.
Yeah.
Simply
Now the likelihood is, the obvious question is, why in the world don't you just buy the 4 or 8%? The ones that beat the S&P 500. Why wouldn't you do that?
Well, because you can't. You're narrowing it down. But when you've got 500 in there.
No, I'm saying buying the companies that beat.
Because your chances of losing are also great too.
No, not really. The answer is they change all the time. Those companies change all the time. So in other words, a company that's in the 4% range for a 15-year period, after a period of time, won't be in there anymore.
Okay, so your best bet is the S&P 500.
S&P, and I recommend what Warren Buffett does, Vanguard Mutual Funds.
We're out of time, Mel. Thank you so much for coming by. Always a pleasure chatting with you.
Great talking with you, Paul.